He's going after Mako.
Oh shit.
What? Oh shit, he's going after me. Run, move, 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 move.
And I'm downed again.
And you're back up.
There's
Fucking attacking me, Ethan. Yeah, take this.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. No, stop it.
Mako, you suck. Why are we fighting Mako? This guy's terrible.
I'm already refunding this game.
You can't refund it, you idiot.
Yeah, I can. It's literally give.
Sons of the Forest is a survival horror game with three main aspects to it: exploration, combat, and story. Similarly, there are three main areas in the game that each have their own focus on one of these aspects. The Overworld is a vast island lush with forestry for the player to explore, while the ominous caves housing untold horrors are where the combat takes front stage. And lastly, the abandoned buildings are where the story comes into play, giving us a brief glimpse into what happened to cause the veritable calamity that's taken place on this island. But a quick note before we begin. This game is in early access. Although considering the game's $40 price tag, I won't be going any easier on it, and intend to review this game like any other. That being said, I do realize it is important to acknowledge that it has been and will continue to be improved over the coming months. This is the last time I will be mentioning it in the video. So let's start with the Overworld, with a high focus on exploration compared to combat and story. The first thing you'll notice is how your surroundings look. Absolutely stunning. I have no clue how an indie team of 15 devs has made environments rivaling multi-billion-dollar companies, but they've done it, and it looks pristine. The forests are dense with trees and other foliage, providing shade for birds as they swoop down to take a drink from flowing rivers. All of this accompanied by sound design that may have well come straight out of the Canadian Shield with its impeccable realism. As you begin to explore, you'll quickly run into the striking mountain range in the middle of the island, its sharp cliffs giving the whole place a great sense of verticality. You even leave tracks in the snow as you appreciate a view from the top. It's the perfect nature hike, beautiful in every way, until you see something in the corner of your eye, or maybe you hear a chill-inducing cry from somewhere in the woods. Despite the scenic nature you find yourself surrounded by, you never do feel truly safe within these woods, thanks to the cannibals who also call this place home. You may not always see them, but you know they're out there, watching your every move. Unlike other games where enemies just launch themselves at you without a second thought, Sons of the Forest takes a much more tactical approach, keeping its creatures just out of sight, scampering in the dense bushes to constantly stay out of your view. It's an amazingly well done system that builds tension like no other game I've played. With graphics like these, you would be forgiven for forgetting that this game is not just a walking simulator, but an entire survival game. I know I did for a while, because for better or worse, this game is only as much of a survival game as you let it be. Don't get me wrong, combat with the natives is inevitable, but the actual survival aspects you might expect from this kind of game, like building a base, hunting for food, and so on, are pretty optional, which I believe is a good thing. Players who want to just storm through the game going from objective to objective will find more than enough food to keep them going and then some, never needing to take a break to build a base or hunt for animals. At the same time, players who do want to build a base will have plenty of options for doing so, and with more of their time being spent on building, they'll grow hungry and be more encouraged to engage with the other survival mechanics such as hunting, fishing, and even some minor farming. The base building itself is a decent improvement from the original Forest, surprising me with the freedom it now gives players, although it can take a bit longer to get to grips with. As the player spends time building up their compound, eventually the seasons will change, giving a great sense of progress as you come back from a long day chopping logs wondering when the harsh winter will be over. Unfortunately, the actual mechanical changes that the seasons come with are pretty lacking, only really freezing lakes and forcing you to carry a torch with you. Your base is also where you'll spend most of your time with the two AI companions, your best bro Kelvin and the semi-mutated Virginia, who will get this video age restricted if she comes too close. These two are handled very well, with Kelvin being an entirely optional addition. If utilized, he is a great tool to cut down on time gathering resources for larger structures, even if he does get a bit confused at times. And if players don't want to deal with him, there are other solutions for that too.
He's dead! Oh my god.
Virginia is an even cooler AI, with a character arc and everything. She goes from initially being wary of the player, to slowly gaining their trust, trading food, and eventually turning into fucking Rambo when you give her all of your guns. Why aren't you this cool, Kelvin? The Overworld is also where you'll experience the majority of the bugs, and there are plenty. Bugs and glitches are the fastest way to ruin an atmosphere as well as any sense of immersion, which is something the Forest works so hard to create, so it really is a shame to see. While I won't go into detail for every single one, know that there are enough to span the entire duration of this video. A small bragging point coming into the game was that it's
4 times the size
of the original Forest, but after playing the game, I can't help but feel like they made the exact same mistake that Fallout 76 did, and I'm not just talking about the excessive amount of bugs. I think this was an addition made because of how cool it sounded, without much thought into the consequences it would bring to gameplay. First of all, the content is incredibly lopsided, with 90% of it in 1/3 of the island. There is virtually nothing on the other 2/3, save for the final bunker you make a beeline for at the end of the game, making it a complete waste of time to explore. I just wish I knew that before spending literal hours walking around it. Some point in development, the devs must have realized the problem they had created for themselves, so to try and remedy it, there's now a GPS, which tells you the exact locations to find interesting content. But in the end, this just worsens the situation. In the last game, you explored this isolated island with fear and unease, never knowing where you would go, what you would see, or what was waiting to be found. With the introduction of this GPS, this completely changes for the worse. You now spend no time exploring, instead heading directly towards wherever the GPS tells you to go, knowing exactly what kind of thing you'll find based on its indicator. The worst part about this new system is that you're practically forced to use it, as the map is simply far too big with so little filling it that it would be impossible to find anything without using the GPS. Another solution the devs attempted was to get Virginia to lead you to places once you've gained her trust, which is actually a pretty promising solution. But as it is now, more often than not she'll just bring you to items you've already collected. This massive map also discourages building any sort of fortress to call your home base, as why would you build a home to keep you pinned down when everything is so far away? Luckily, the large map doesn't inhibit the massive potential that the cannibals have as the game's enemies, arguably even heightening it. The cannibals in the forest were already known for their uniquely advanced AI, interacting with the player's actions to in turn dictate how they'd react, creating an amazing type of push-pull system. If some cannibals are getting too close for comfort, you could always impale its thick skull with your spear, but what if another cannibal sees your act of brutality and reports it to the rest of its tribe? Elegies of the Fallen may scare off the odd scout, but don't count on it stopping a planned attack for revenge. Sons of the Forest manages to improve on its predecessor's system to create an even more unnerving experience. Cannibals will imprison mutants that you can free for a short-lived ally in battle. Scouts will call out to each other, reporting any signs of aggression you might have made. Smaller enemies make tactical retreats to call in larger groups, and can even beg for mercy when they find themselves cornered. They use bushes to remain hidden, climb trees to get a vantage point, slip around on unfamiliar ice, and the list goes on. There aren't too many variations of the overground brutes for you to fight, but that never bothered me, as each individual cannibal was so unique in how they behaved that each encounter felt entirely unique and threatening in its own way.
Oh shit.
He's gonna
Do you have the taser?
Now as we wind down from the mental battle that takes place in the overworld, we delve deeper into the vast cave network spanning the underbelly of the island. where we find ourselves in an even darker hell, facing even worse foes. These caves have a much more concentrated focus on combat, still having some exploration and story, but usually restricted to one-way paths and the odd email receipt. If the cannibals are where the Force AI is at its best, then the mutants are where the psychological horror of the designs shine the brightest. The caves complement the twisted mutants that fill them up to a T, making it a horrific experience no matter how many friends you have backing you up. Run! The dark lighting hides unknown monstrosities in the room ahead as you listen to blood-curdling cries. You can throw in a flare if you want to check, but not only will that alert them, it'll also chew up a limited resource, potentially leaving you stranded in the dark. Now, for the combat itself, it's pretty good. It's not some new system that'll blow your mind, but it works. The three main weapon types include big melee weapons like the axe that you can also block with, spears and javelins that you can use to poke from a range or even throw at the enemy, and lastly ranged weapons, which tend to be far superior at the cost of taking ammo. Although for the thrown spears and arrows, you can always pick them off the still living and writhing body of mutants, making a fun game where you're constantly ducking in and out of their strike zone. Just make sure to not hit any of your teammates doing the same thing.
Sage, I have an
Damn, I
arrow.
threw my
Sage,
spear.
Sage, I have an arrow sticking out of me.
No, you don't.
It's gonna be the death of us.
Even within the subcategories, there's a shocking amount of weapon variety, each with their own uses, with most staying viable for the duration of the game. Health runs out fast, so your best bet is to skin defeated corpses to use their flesh as armor. This creates a great risk-reward system, which is oddly enough similar to games like Hollow Knight, where instead of retreating to regain your health, it can actually be beneficial to double down on your aggressiveness to regain some defense. The mutants do a good job at maintaining their effectiveness against multiple players by having large attack radiuses with their flailing limbs, but for any more than 2 players, I'd still recommend playing on hard mode.
He went flying.
Nice.
Unfortunately, the variety of the mutants inside of the caves didn't receive as much of an upgrade as the AI of the ones above ground. These cave dwellers are, mechanically speaking, much more like traditional enemies, only really attacking the player with short breaks to run around. So, unlike the cannibals, who are all unique with their incredibly varied and unpredictable actions, the underground mutants' uniqueness are derived entirely from their variety, which hasn't really been expanded from the last game. The original Forest had 6 really unique mutants, and Sons of the Forest has the same amount, currently without even a final boss. Encountering horrendously mutated monstrosities capable of unknown destruction is what makes the caves so exciting and scary, so this flaw really brings them down.
Oh shit.
Oh my god, he's on the ceiling. He's on the ceiling.
What the fuck?
The caves also suffer from the massive map. Unable to develop caves all around such a large island, all the ones that aren't within the starting area are one-room loot holes without a single enemy defending them.
Is this really it?
Lastly, we find ourselves in the broken down estates long deserted by their occupants. While there's still some combat and exploration to be had, these are mainly for storytelling and the finding of key items. The buildings themselves were great to explore. Mutants are present, but are much more of a quick change of pace rather than a main obstacle like they are in caves, and that's a good thing. The buildings can't match the same heart-clenching atmosphere as the caves, so it's good that they focus less on the combat and more on world building. Whether that be with sounds,
Stuff at the door.
visuals,
Hey, birthday boy. Yay.
and even the odd text file, which, while not as creative, can be useful every once in a while to get a specific point across. The visual storytelling is phenomenal, giving the player just enough to try and conceptualize the horrors that cause these gruesome scenes of chaos. But these questions that the dev put in the player's head need to be answered, and they never really are. So let's talk a bit about the story. It's very reminiscent of The Forest and many other indie horror games that were so prevalent at the time, built up mysteries that ultimately aren't answered. Back when The Forest came out, I quite appreciated that, unlike most games of its genre, it actually had a decently well-explained ending that the average player could wrap their head around. But this game takes a bit of a drop from that, and I can guarantee that you will have no clue what just happened after beating it. I have no problem with complicated stories that need entire communities to figure out, but I am of the opinion that no matter how complicated the inner workings of a story may be, there should still be a shallower layer that the average player can attach to, which is completely lacking in Sons of the Forest. As me and my friends approached the end of the game, we realized that we still hadn't discovered any of the secrets surrounding this island. How were the mutants created? Who shot down our helicopter? Where are the billionaires that are the entire reason we came to this island? And so on. Needless to say, as we reached the final cutscene where we were hoping to have at least some of our questions answered, we only grew more confused. In a moment where we were supposed to be at max tension, suspensefully waiting to see what would come next, we were instead so damn confused that we talked over the entire final cutscene. All the while characters we didn't recognize interacted with us like we had played the whole game alongside them.
14
What is
seconds.
this?
Oh shit, wait, what?
In the end, when the choice came to either join the helicopter to flee this island or continue fighting the cannibals, my friend spawned in the helicopter's wings, dying instantly, and I picked up my stuff, thinking that it was a glitch that made me drop it, not realizing that it meant the helicopter would leave without me. They just left. They left us here.
What just happened? We got a walkie-talkie though.
I may have come down pretty hard on some aspects of the game, but in the end, I quite enjoyed my time with Sons of the Forest, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing how they'll improve on the game, especially the story. Who knows, if they change enough, I might even make a follow-up video discussing what they fixed and how my opinions have changed. But until then, thanks for watching, and subscribe.
I'm shoving my pole into these babies'